I always believed weddings were about unity, about bringing families together. My son was over the moon about his fiancée, and even though I had my doubts, I kept them to myself. I wanted to see him happy, even if it meant I had to accept someone who didn't truly accept me. But the night before the wedding, everything changed. She cornered me in the hallway, her lips curling into a smirk. With a voice dripping with cruelty, she whispered, "After tomorrow you won't be family anymore." Her words shattered me. They weren't just unkind, they were final. I realized then that my presence wasn't welcome, so I made the painful decision not to attend. But fate has a way of revealing truth. The next day, the wedding didn't happen, and suddenly everything made sense. My name is Linda, and I always believed in happy endings. I was a single mother for most of my son's life, raising him through sleepless nights, endless bills, and the weight of being both mother and father. When he finally introduced me to the woman he wanted to marry, I wanted so badly to believe this was his happy ending. Her name was Claire. On the surface, she was charming, always smiling, always perfectly dressed, the kind of woman who knew how to impress at first glance. My son was enchanted by her, and because he loved her, I tried to love her too. But behind her polite gestures, there were cracks. I noticed the way she dismissed me in conversations, the way her eyes rolled when I offered suggestions, and the subtle digs about my old-fashioned ways. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just nerves, that she'd warm up to me in time. As the wedding approached, I threw myself into preparations. I wanted everything to be perfect for my son, but there was a growing unease in my chest, one I couldn't quite silence. It wasn't until the night before the wedding that the mask came off, and I realized just how wrong I had been. The rehearsal dinner was full of laughter, clinking glasses, and Claire's family basking in their own grandeur. I sat quietly at the end of the table, smiling whenever my son looked my way. He was glowing with happiness, and that was enough for me. But after dinner, as I walked down the hall toward the exit, I heard footsteps behind me. Claire caught up, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Linda," she said sweetly, though her eyes held no warmth, "I need to talk to you." I turned, expecting a simple reminder about the schedule. Instead, she leaned in close, her breath brushing against my ear. "After tomorrow, you won't be family anymore." For a moment, I froze. Her words sliced through me, cold and final. I stared at her, searching for some sign that she was joking. But her smirk told me otherwise. "Why would you say that?" I whispered. She shrugged. "Because it's true. After tomorrow, your son will have his own family, and you won't matter anymore." Her words echoed in my chest long after she walked away. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my small bedroom. Her words wouldn't leave me. "You won't be family anymore." I thought about everything I had done for my son, working double shifts, missing meals so he could eat, sacrificing every dream so his could flourish. And now, on the eve of his wedding, I was being discarded like an old piece of furniture. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but underneath the hurt was something else: resolve. If my presence at the wedding would cause pain, then maybe the most loving thing I could do for my son was to step aside. But a quiet voice inside me asked, "Why should you let her erase you?" The next morning, I saw my son briefly before the wedding party whisked him away. His face lit up when he saw me. "Mom, isn't she amazing? I can't believe I'm marrying her." I forced a smile, my heart breaking. "If she makes you happy, then I'm happy for you." But as he hugged me tightly, I realized something. He had no idea what she had said to me. To him, everything was perfect, and he was about to begin the happiest day of his life. I didn't want to taint that. I didn't want him to see the cracks before he was ready, so when the time came to leave for the ceremony, I quietly stayed behind. At the chapel, guests whispered as they noticed my absence. Some assumed I was ill, others that I was simply running late. Claire, however, noticed immediately. Witnesses later told me she smiled as she walked down the aisle, smug in the knowledge that she had succeeded in pushing me out. But fate has a way of revealing the truth, because while my seat remained empty, something else began to unravel, something even Claire hadn't planned for. While the guests waited, whispers spread through the crowd. Someone had overheard Claire on the phone in the bridal suite. Her words were sharp, panicked. "No, he doesn't know. Just stop calling me until after this is over." The bridesmaid who overheard the conversation hesitated, but eventually told my cousin, who was at the wedding. By the time word spread, doubt had already begun to take root. Where was the fairy tale bride my son thought he was marrying? I wasn't there, but I later heard the story in full detail. As the minister began the ceremony, a man burst into the chapel. His face was red with anger. He shouted Claire's name, accusing her of lying, of stringing him along while planning to marry my son. Gasps filled the room. My son turned to her in shock, his eyes wide. "Is this true?" he asked. Claire stammered, her perfect facade crumbling in front of everyone. The ceremony collapsed. Guests left in murmurs of disbelief, the decorations wilting under the weight of scandal. The wedding that was supposed to unite two families never happened, and I, sitting alone at home, had no idea yet that my absence had been the quiet beginning of the truth coming to light. The morning after the canceled wedding, the family was in chaos. Texts, phone calls, and angry messages flew back and forth. Some blamed Claire, some blamed my son, and a few whispered that I had somehow caused the disaster. I sat quietly in my living room, sipping tea and trying to make sense of everything. My heart ached for my son. He had been blindsided, humiliated in front of everyone he loved. And yet, deep down, I felt relief. My absence had kept me safe from Claire's venom, and it seemed her perfect plan had begun to unravel. When my cousin called, she said, "Linda, everyone is talking about how brave you were not to attend. Honestly, if you'd been there, things might have been worse." Her words comforted me slightly, but the pain remained. My son needed me now more than ever, and I had to figure out how to support him without stepping into the chaos that had engulfed his life. Later that day, my son came by. His shoulders were slumped, his face pale. "Mom, I don't understand. She lied? She manipulated me?" I pulled him into a hug, feeling the weight of his grief. "Yes, baby. But it's not your fault. You couldn't have known." He sank into the couch beside me. "I feel so embarrassed, so stupid." Everyone was watching, and I didn't see it. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I held him tighter, whispering, "It's not about what you didn't see. It's about what we learn from this. She isn't who we thought she was, and that's the lesson. You can still move forward, stronger than before." In that moment, I realized how fragile trust could be and how betrayal could strike closest to the heart. But I also realized how necessary it was to protect my son from further harm. Within days, stories started emerging from friends and relatives. Claire had been weaving a web of lies about me, spreading rumors that I was controlling, difficult, and unkind. She had convinced some distant relatives that my presence was toxic. I felt the anger rising in me. This wasn't just manipulation. It was an attempt to rewrite history, to paint me as the villain in my own son's life. But I refused to fight back with anger. I knew that exposing her truth required strategy, not emotion. I began to document everything, texts, emails, and witnesses who had seen her true behavior. I had to prepare, not just for my son's sake, but for my own. The stress of the failed wedding and Claire's schemes weighed heavily on me. I decided to step back from the family drama for a few days to regain clarity. I spent time journaling, reflecting on my role in my son's life and the boundaries I needed to set. During those quiet moments, I realized how much of my energy I had poured into others' happiness, often at the expense of my own well-being. It was time to reclaim some control over my life. I reached out to a trusted friend, someone who had been through family conflicts before. Over coffee, I shared every detail: the fiancé's threats, the canceled wedding, and my son's confusion. "Linda," she said gently, "you did the right thing by staying away. Sometimes silence is the most powerful choice. But now you need to think ahead. Protect your son, protect yourself, and gather proof of everything. Don't let her gaslight you into doubting yourself." Her words strengthened me. I realized I wasn't alone, and that I had allies who could help navigate this storm. I began to outline a plan. I would help my son understand the situation fully, gather evidence of Claire's manipulation, and take steps to safeguard him from further betrayal. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protection. Protecting the people I loved and standing up for the truth. I felt a quiet fire inside me. For too long, I had prioritized politeness and peace over my own instincts. No more. This time I would act decisively. Finally, I had my first chance to confront Claire indirectly. I met with a mutual family member who had witnessed Claire's behavior firsthand. Carefully, I asked questions, observed reactions, and gathered information without raising suspicion. Claire believed she had won, but I could feel the tide turning. My preparation, patience, and quiet determination were setting the stage for the moment when truth would prevail. I decided to act cautiously. Confrontation would not help me. Observation would. I began spending more time around family gatherings and social events, keeping a careful eye on Claire's behavior. She was confident, always smiling, always appearing charming. But beneath the mask, her manipulations were visible to someone paying attention. I noticed small things. The way she subtly interrupted conversations to assert control. How she twisted my son's words to make him seem indecisive. The way she tried to alienate him from me. Each incident was small on its own, but together they formed a clear pattern. I documented everything in a private journal, detailing dates, times, and witnesses. My plan was not to shame her publicly, but to protect my son from being deceived and to prepare for a confrontation if necessary. The process gave me a sense of control, something I hadn't felt since the wedding collapse. Next, I turned to technology. I began saving messages, emails, and recordings that highlighted Claire's attempts to manipulate my son and misrepresent facts to other family members. It wasn't about spying, it was about truth. I also reached out quietly to family friends who had witnessed incidents firsthand. Many were reluctant to get involved at first, fearing backlash. But when they realized the extent of Claire's schemes, they began to provide accounts and written statements. Every piece of evidence strengthened my confidence. I wasn't imagining things. My instincts had been correct all along. Claire was trying to push me out of my son's life and manipulate the family dynamic in her favor. While collecting evidence, I focused on my son. I gently spoke with him about boundaries and self-awareness, careful not to overwhelm him. "Ethan, I know you love Claire, but love shouldn't come at the cost of your own judgment. Pay attention. Listen to your heart, but notice actions too," I advised. He nodded, though conflicted. "Mom, I don't want to see her differently. I just want to believe she's good," he said softly. I held his hand. "I know, sweetheart, but being blind to the truth doesn't protect you. It puts you at risk." I realized then that this was about more than evidence. It was about giving him the tools to recognize manipulation and to prepare him for the reality he would have to face if he stayed involved with her. By this point, I had learned the power of patience. Claire believed she had already won. She flaunted her perceived control, confident that no one would challenge her. But I knew that patience could be the strongest weapon. Every gathering, every conversation, every carefully recorded detail added to my arsenal. I let her speak, let her act, while I quietly built the case for truth. The more she bragged or lied, the more material I had. It felt empowering. I wasn't just defending myself. I was preparing to protect the future of my son and the integrity of our family. One afternoon, a distant aunt approached me quietly. "Linda," she said, glancing around, "I've seen how Claire behaves. I don't like it either, and I'm willing to help you." I felt a surge of relief. With allies, even reluctant ones, I could start consolidating evidence more effectively. Together, we began mapping Claire's lies and planning how to present the truth carefully, without creating unnecessary conflict. Having support made the burden lighter and the mission clearer. I wasn't alone. With evidence, allies, and strategy in place, I began subtly confronting Claire indirectly. Questions about her intentions, reminders about promises she had made, and gentle but pointed observations put her on edge. She smiled politely, but I could sense unease creeping in. I wasn't trying to humiliate her publicly. This was chess, not checkers. Every move was calculated, every word deliberate. I wanted the truth to come to light naturally, in a way that could not be ignored. Finally, a turning point arrived. During one family gathering, Claire casually bragged about her plans to a friend, plans that included isolating my son and claiming authority over family assets. Unbeknownst to her, the friend had secretly recorded the conversation. When I saw the video, I felt a mix of relief and vindication. My patience and careful observation had paid off. This recording would be undeniable proof of her manipulations. It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, fairness, and protecting my son from harm. The tide was turning, and Claire's facade was beginning to crack. The day finally arrived when the evidence I had collected would start to make a difference. Family gatherings became a stage, though no one realized it yet. I carefully arranged meetings and casual conversations, dropping hints that encouraged witnesses to speak up. Claire, confident as ever, strutted through these gatherings, thinking she had already won. She laughed easily, charm dripping from every word, as if nothing could touch her. But cracks were beginning to form. Her smirk faltered when I mentioned, almost casually, "Oh, didn't you tell Aunt May something different the other day?" The subtlety was key. I wasn't accusing her outright. I was planting seeds of doubt. The more she tried to maintain her perfection, the more she revealed her true intentions. Each slip, each sigh, each contradiction was being meticulously documented, all quietly stored for the moment when the truth would be unavoidable. Even my son was starting to notice. His brow furrowed more often when Claire spoke, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. I didn't push him. Patience was my weapon. I had to let the pieces fall naturally. During a family dinner, an unexpected moment shifted the balance. One of Claire's friends, someone I had quietly befriended, let slip a remark about Claire's manipulations. It was accidental, and the family noticed. "She told me she planned this all along," the friend murmured. "To isolate your son and take over the family decisions." Eyes widened around the table. My son's face went pale. Claire's laughter faltered. For the first time, she realized her secret was no longer hidden. I remained calm, sipping my tea, letting the tension grow naturally. The whispers spread quickly. Relatives who had previously been unsure started connecting dots. Claire's control began to crumble, and the carefully built illusion of charm began to disintegrate before everyone's eyes. Later that week, I arranged a private conversation with Claire. I didn't confront her with anger. Instead, I spoke softly but firmly, recounting incidents she had tried to hide. "You've manipulated everyone, Claire," I said, meeting her gaze. "It's time to stop. My son deserves the truth, and so do you. You can either come clean or face the consequences of your actions." Her face went pale. She tried to smile, tried to deflect, but her usual confidence had disappeared. I could see her calculating, realizing that the web she had spun was starting to collapse. I left her with one final sentence. "You underestimated me. That was your biggest mistake." The video recording from the family gathering became the linchpin of the confrontation. I played it for my son first, carefully choosing the moment. "Ethan, watch this," I said softly. The footage revealed Claire's candid admissions, her scheming plans, and her intention to control him and manipulate the family. My son's eyes filled with shock and disbelief. "I can't believe—" "She lied to me all this time," he whispered. I held his hand. "I warned you to pay attention, baby. But it's okay. Now you see the truth, and we can handle it together." Once the video evidence was shared discreetly among key family members, reactions were immediate. Cousins, aunts, and uncles began speaking up about their own experiences and observations. Claire tried to maintain control, but the chorus of voices against her made her defensiveness obvious. She attempted to justify her actions, but each excuse crumbled under the weight of collective testimony and proof. My son looked at me, his face a mixture of relief and sorrow. "I never wanted to see her like this. I just wanted to believe in her," he said softly. I nodded, understanding completely. The betrayal hurt him, but it was necessary for him to see the truth. With evidence, witnesses, and my son's awareness, Claire's facade finally collapsed. She became visibly anxious in social settings, unsure of whom she could trust. During a tense family discussion, she snapped, lashing out at anyone questioning her. The more she tried to assert dominance, the more her lies were exposed. By now, it was clear to everyone that her plan had failed. The woman who had thought she could manipulate the family and control my son was no longer in charge. The culmination of Act 4 occurred during a final family meeting. I addressed Claire calmly, with the entire family present. "This stops now," I said firmly. "We will not allow manipulation or deceit in this family. My son deserves truth, respect, and love. If you cannot honor that, then you have no place here." Claire's eyes filled with anger and disbelief. She realized finally that her control was gone. The family rallied around my son, and I quietly felt a sense of relief and victory. The stage was set for the resolution, the final act where justice, reconciliation, and clarity would take center stage. After the final confrontation, the atmosphere in the house had shifted. Claire's arrogance had crumbled, and the family slowly rallied around my son and me. But the tension was far from gone. Trust had been broken, and wounds ran deep. I sat with my son, gently holding his hands. "Ethan, you've seen the truth now. It hurts, but knowing it allows us to protect ourselves and our family." He nodded, eyes moist. "I never imagined she could be so deceitful. I feel betrayed." "I know," I said softly. "But you're stronger than you think. And together, we'll heal." With the video evidence and witness accounts, the family collectively recognized the reality of Claire's actions. The shift was subtle at first, but soon it became clear. She no longer held influence. Her manipulations were exposed, leaving her isolated and powerless. The next weeks were devoted to rebuilding trust within the family. I spent quality time with my son, discussing boundaries, intentions, and the importance of vigilance without paranoia. Family members who had once remained silent began to openly support him. Conversations that were once tense now carried warmth and honesty. It wasn't easy. Emotional scars remain longer than visible ones. But with patience, empathy, and consistent truth-telling, the family began to knit itself back together. For the first time in months, I felt hope. Claire attempted to regain control, but it was futile. Invitations to family events ceased. Calls went unanswered. She had lost her influence, and with it, her carefully constructed image of power. She reached out to my son in private, trying to explain or manipulate, but he ignored her messages. The boy I had raised had finally seen the consequences of deception firsthand. He had learned to value honesty and integrity above all else. One quiet evening, I sat with my son and spoke about the future. "You've learned a hard lesson, Ethan, but this is what life does. It tests us. And every test is a chance to grow." He looked at me, his eyes sincere. "Mom, I don't know what I would have done without you. You protected me, even when it hurt." "I love you," I whispered. "That's why I couldn't stay silent. And now you know that love can sometimes mean making difficult choices." The family slowly found its rhythm again. Shared meals, laughter, and conversations replaced the tension. Relatives who had once doubted me now expressed gratitude for my guidance and courage. Ethan began making decisions independently, but with the understanding of values, respect, and awareness I had instilled. Claire's absence became a quiet reminder of the consequences of deceit and the strength required to stand for truth. Through this ordeal, I realized the power of patience, observation, and quiet determination. Confrontation is not always immediate. Sometimes the best strategy is to act wisely, gather evidence, and let the truth reveal itself. I had protected my son, preserved family unity, and ensured that deceit did not go unchecked. More importantly, I had modeled strength, resilience, and grace under pressure. Months later, life began to feel lighter. Ethan and I shared dinners, stories, and laughter. Trust had been rebuilt, and the family had learned a profound lesson about honesty and integrity. I looked back at the events with a sense of quiet pride. I had acted with love, courage, and strategy. What started as betrayal had ultimately strengthened bonds and exposed the truth. As I watched my son play with his friends' children, I whispered, "We survived. We learned, and we moved forward stronger than ever." The storm had passed, leaving behind clarity, resilience, and the unshakable bond of family.